Welcome to another HR Heroes session. I hope you have been enjoying HR Heroes so far, if you have attended the previous sessions today. If not, I hope you will enjoy this session with myself, Stuti, and Nairi today. I am pleased to have a great group of panelists. I will introduce them to you in a second, and they will also introduce themselves. Today, our topic is how can HR play a bigger role in the new world of work? As we are all aware, the whole world has shifted in the past few years, accelerated by the pandemic situation. And it actually did bring a lot of good and a lot of challenges to the work environment. And we are still in the middle of addressing some of the changes in organizations, and HR has been playing an important role in this. So we will discuss today how actually that role is emerging in different ways and how it is growing and how it can go to different directions and what HR professionals can do to influence those directions. So with me today, we have Stuti Bajaj, who is the Global Head of HR for LHH, and Nairi McMahon, who is a Director at CRR UK. So what we intend to do is we want to make this session quite a dynamic session with the participants moving us in one direction or not. The topic we have is clear, and we have a semi-structured session planned for today. So we'd like to have some conversation among ourselves on what HR can do, how HR professionals can influence their businesses. However, we will be asking for feedback and your input very actively as well. You will be able to use the chat function, and we might be using whiteboard and other activities you will have access to as well. So let's get started. To help us move forward with the session, I wanted to just very quickly ask our panelists, Stuti and Nairi, a brief introduction question. Stuti, let's start with you. Could you introduce yourself and explain to us what you do in your current role briefly, please?
Sure, and thank you, Burak. Hi, everyone. I am Stuti. I'm the Global Head of HR for LHH. I have been with the group for 4 years now. I am based out of Zurich. Originally, I come from India, and I'm a biotech engineer turned HR. So that's my quick and short introduction, and I'll hand it over to Nairi to introduce herself.
Thanks.
Thank you, Stuti. Thank you, Burak. Hi, everybody. My name is Nairi McMahon. I'm based in London, and I work with a company called CRR Global Center for Right Relationship. We offer training and consult and coaching in the relationship sphere, work relationship sphere. So I have multiple roles in that system. As Burak mentioned, I am the director of CRR UK, so look after the UK and Nordic P&L. I'm also the faculty member delivering the training. And the third role is that I sit within the executive committee to advise on strategy. And so all those three roles show the complexity of work and how we manage as we navigate different roles in different countries.
Great.
So,
Thanks, Nairi, for that introduction. You bring the business leadership experience, you're advisor to businesses as well, and also to many HR professionals. And to both being an HR professional and someone who works very closely with different business units globally, I think we will have a lot of interesting insights, I'm sure, from this group. And also, I wanted to introduce myself very quickly, as I forgot to do it. I usually forget to introduce myself in the beginning. I also have a similar role to Nairi in the sense that I am leading a business at LHH. I lead our leadership development business for UK and Ireland. And I also help provide our services to our clients in talent and leadership development areas. And one thing I also wanted to mention, a lot of you who are joining today would know LHH, but LHH, just to give you the perspective, LHH is a company that is one of the global business units of the Adecco Group, one of the 3 business units. And as part of that big family, we also have a big group that offers services in different areas, ranging from career transition and mobility services to recruitment solutions and leadership development solutions. So we are bringing different experiences from different types of professional services and HR experience today. And as you mentioned, Nairi, your 3 different roles actually really nicely also will probably give us the insights around the changes in all those 3 different roles, different groups, different geographies, how we work in the new world of work. So what I want to ask you is, what do you see as the big changes since the pandemic in the new world, in the world of work?
So I think the biggest change that we're seeing is obviously the wanting to be at choice around how we work, where we work. You know, it's funny, I did a yoga class this morning, and there was virtual people on virtual and in person, and people's homes were in the yoga room with doggies coming in and children opening the door. That's exactly what's happened at work as well. You know, where space for work has been invited into the home, and that's kind of lowered the way that we've not lowered, but brought in more of our humanity within the work. And so there's a sense of freedom when I want to work. There's a sense of how I want to be in relationship with people at work. So for me, the way I see it is that not only physically being invited, but also the relationship aspects of work have changed.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Thanks for that. And that, of course, influences how we do our businesses and how we do HR. So I want to come to Stuti quickly as a follow-up question. How do you think Stuti has the role of HR practitioners changed due to these changes?
I think HR has been evolving over a period of time. And now we live in such interesting times, like Nairi was saying, that we've gotten work within somebody's house. And people are now, there is no hiding themselves under corporateness. They are somehow enabled in a good way to show up authentic, right? Mm-hmm. And when our workforce is showing us authentic, there just comes a change. How do you deal with that? Because we're not used to managers, leaders, that vulnerable side of things, right? And HR starts playing a critical role in navigating through these times. Whereas HR has the 3, as I say, 3 personas, and we're in a stretched role now, where you have the traditional, which I call the past, and it's still there with us, the operations bit. And then you have the present, where you're dealing with hybrid working, you're dealing with how to coach a leader to be managing those remote teams, as well as, because the world is changing so quickly, you're also to think about the future, the generations of workforce, what will be the next new thing, how do we get our workforce to the workforce crisis, there are geopolitical issues happening, and somewhere we're the custodians of keeping the past, the present, and the future in one person. It's like the Christmas ghost story, right? And it's all in one. So hence, there's so much involvement there. That's how I see it changing.
I love that. And I want to ask that actually question also to see what the audience, our participants, think about it. I love how you described it, Stuti. Past is more around those operations, the traditional responsibilities of HR. Present is more around what this current world brings to us and how we need to address, like the challenges of the office working from the office, remote working, etc. And the future is how do we shape that future? And it was very clear during the pandemic that we need to think about the future so that we are not 2 steps behind in the tomorrow's world. I want to ask our participants, which one do you feel most occupied with or worried about in these days? If you can type on the chat, past, future, or present, where do you see the biggest challenges, and how do you think your role is influenced? You can answer one of the 2 questions, past, future, or present. Where do you see the most challenges? And if you want to share any other comments around where you think HR role is changing most, let's start hearing from our participants too. I'll give a second to the participants. Yeah. Present to future is the biggest challenge. Yes, great question coming from Kevin around what do the panel think HR skills of the future like? Really good, great question. We'll come to that in a moment. Health and well-being high on the agenda. Yeah, employees wish to see more from us as employers. We're spending a lot of time on the hybrid and the present issue. Current cost of living crisis is another one. Being more strategic is a challenge. Yeah, the challenge, the conflict between employers and employees around flexibility and office space, financial well-being, worry about the future. Yeah, how do we ensure skills remain relevant, hybrid, but still maintaining a culture of being together? Really great points. Generational differences, future pay increases, lots of good points. Thank you all. Such great points coming from the chat. Wow, present. I'm just reading the last one. We're currently in the transition period between the old world and the new. Yeah, younger generation are more in the new, older workforce have their traditions. Yes, how do we create that upskilling, learning from each other, be respectful for traditions, but also go to the future? Recruitment of the staff, that's actually stuff that is really important challenge these days. Progression, pay expectations, industrial changes, skills needs. Wow, lots of great comments. What a good audience group we have today. Let's take the conversation to some of those directions. I think one thing we want to really get into is what we hope to do better in the HR world. What can HR practitioners do to influence that new world of work better? But before we go into that question of the session today, I want to really tackle some of these challenges that we are hearing from the participants. Maybe one element that I'm hearing is there is a conflict, right? There is present, past, future in terms of how we stretch ourselves. There is that type of tension around what is expected, what are we supposed to do. There is another challenge around the multi-generational workforce. We have different expectations from different workforces. How do we address those? There is a challenge around the current geopolitical situation being quite challenging, great resignation, hard to fill in jobs, hard to keep people in. People look for flexibility, but also in terms of the cost of living, there are so many factors influencing people's relationship with their employer. And HR's role is another big item. And then there's one question around the skills for the future and what skills we expect from HR. At least those 4 are the big questions coming to my mind. I will put them out to Stuti and Nairi. Where do we start? Which one would you like to tackle first?
It'd be interesting to explore this idea of tension between the past and the present and the future, and tension that exists in multi-generational. It's almost like that's the thread, isn't it? Because we have those who are older and younger, and that tension. So from the world, you know, in relationships, in any form, there's always a tension. And I think what the invitation is to, rather than trying to solve for one or the other, is to see those tension as an ongoing narrative, that we have to always have this tension. What might be an interesting way of looking at it is, rather than trying to resolve the tension, and Stuti, I think you and I have had a conversation about it, what would it be like if we integrate the differences? I think the tension is there because there's almost like a preference of letting go of one or the other. But what if we integrate it? What if we think that the older employees' gift is this, and the younger generation's gift is that? Traditional HR holding is this. It's really important for us to still do the operational stuff and imagine the future. What's your view?
Absolutely. I mean, to be honest, I should have added when Burak had asked, and I talked about the past, present, and future. Remember, I said this is within one person. When I say we're stretched, I'm not talking from an aspect of bandwidth, which all of us are, but I'm talking we are at war within our own roles, which creates that and gives that word of conflict, that I want to do all these cool things. I want to do the big picture stuff. I want to automate this. And this is also very similar to how Nairi said, this is also a generational workforce issue and a challenge we are facing. And to approach this, one of the things which Nairi and me talked at length about were this integrated approach. And when you think there is a conflict, rather than fighting it, to really think about why and what it is. Because as we know, the history always shapes the present and the future, right? The traditional piece, everybody in HR would like to get rid of the admin stuff. Yes, it can be automated. However, that piece will still stay. It's not going to go. The legislations, the laws. I'm in a global role managing 25 countries. And I'm just like, wow, every country has a different nuance, a different holiday role. Like, you know, I have 20 rules and I have hours and stuff. It's so different, but it's not going to go away. But we need to do it, and we need to make sure it happens. So one of the approach, which at least I'm telling my team, is to question the status quo, because in HR, I believe we do keep our heads down and we just keep rolling. And we do all these things, but take a moment to reflect. What is it that you've been doing? What is the good things that you're doing? And turn it into that integrated narrative of how do you want to approach the future using the tools and skills you've gained, because it's not a waste, right? And that's how I would say you could approach that piece and really build upon those skills, which are, and there was a question about what skills does HR need to have for the future? To be honest, not just HR, everybody in the workforce will need to have transferable skills.
Yeah.
There will not be skills that this is what I need to do this role. It needs to be a skill that can be transformed as the world is evolving. So more around data, understanding the business, getting really niche into where you can actually challenge that status quo, right? How do we make it better? So that would be my take on how we are at war within our own role, and we don't have to be.
Great.
And Burak, before we move on, it's Stuti, if I can just build on that as well. I mean, even from my perspective, 10 years ago, I held one role, and I was a senior person. That was my role. Now I'm holding 3 roles within the same organization, and in a way, it's also that's HR. That request is coming from HR as well, even if the role title is one. HR has always incorporated so many aspects to it. There's been learning and development, or operations, or business partner. And it may be that there's a period of integration, not only the past, the present, the future, but all aspects of HR integrated. and aware.
Great.
Yeah.
Really great topics. And actually, I was very reflective on that point you made, Stuti, around questioning the status quo. I think something there is important for everyone, not only the HR population. Sometimes by not questioning the status quo, we are keeping ourselves in the present and the past. And maybe this is also related to skills that we want, we expect, we hope from our future leaders and HR professionals, is how do we develop that skill to shape the future, to imagine the future? And a good part of it is by starting with the status quo and challenging it. I feel like no organization that has achieved extraordinary results achieved it by following traditional HR practices. So if you look at the extraordinary performance in any organization, any setting, it comes through some real innovative, creative, different ways of approaching people issues. And it's usually people aspect that brings that extraordinary result to organizations. So I would just highlight maybe something we do well in most organizations today is that we develop skills to address the needs of the past. Definitely. We develop some skills to address the needs of the present. The others we try to develop on the go, but we don't spend enough time on those skills that will help transform organizations. So that would be my addition to that comment.
Yeah, and I think there was a desire during the pandemic, not a desire, but a lot of organizations and within HR as well, where they did spend time collaborating to come up with solutions. And we know that cooperation requires different skills, but collaboration is where you get the innovation, because that's when you're bringing in all the different experiences and also different minds to solve something that we don't know what the solution is. It's not in the past and it's not in the present, but together from different viewpoints and diversity, we're able to at least change the direction.
Great. I have a number of questions related to this point too, Nairi, but I'm holding myself a bit because there are so many good comments still I want to address from the audience. Maybe if I can, before we move on to the other topics we wanted to discuss, if I can ask, what do you see in this crisis situation with the cost of living, people finding better salaries elsewhere, leaving their organizations for those purposes, and or they want more flexibility, they want to move out, and it becomes a challenge for HR population also to address that. What would you recommend the HR professionals attending in our audience today that they think about when it comes to today's challenges around this?
I think it's interesting that you frame it like HR is facing these issues, right? But in reality, we are the ones between the business and the people. So it's actually the business facing it. And there is a reason why I'm saying this, because usually all the people topic, culture, purpose becomes an HR exercise, which it isn't. It's for the business. What is it? And you talked a little bit about, Barak, successful businesses we have seen were innovative and stuff, but they had this really strong purpose of doing something.
Yeah.
And that is in these testing times where people have reevaluated their work paths, like what do they want from their lives? How do they want to progress? We've seen the Great Resignation. After the Great Resignation, we've seen quitting as well, which was contradictory. I enjoyed that concept a lot. And then you were talking about, we are under the skills shortage, specifically in the tech area, I would say. where skills are of shortage, but that's also technology is building up. So one way to approach this and losing talent is to really pay attention to your talent, which you currently have within your organization, because it's not just me or you who's not able to recruit, it's everywhere. Hence, we're even seeing some inflated packages. And to be honest, if somebody wants to take it, I will never be the barrier. And I say, good for you, go for it. But this also means that we, as HR professionals and business leaders, have a lot of work to do in making sure we're creating that right environment for our workforce. And as I said, and I can't highlight this more, now is more than ever critical to start looking into and appreciating the workforce you currently have, preparing them for the future, whether, and I'm not talking mere trainings, right? But really true upskilling, getting them behind you, listen to them what they need, because the crisis you're talking, it's not for a city right now, it's a worldwide crisis. And there is no black and white straightforward answer, but like the feedback from people in terms of, there was something around flexibility, that employers want people in the office and employees want more flexibility. To be honest, there needs to be a balance, because if you go through the comments, there's also a piece about, if everybody goes remote, how do we build a cooperative, collaborative culture, right? So it does need and require balance, and it requires a lot to do. What is it that you do in a business, right? And whether you are supposed to be a frontline worker who's supposed to be at a job, otherwise that thing will not happen, or you're more often a desk job where it is okay to work from home, but you still need to get people together, because we did at LHH a lot of people surveys, and Nairi, that was an eye-opener, because when pandemic hit and we did not have a black book to figure this out, we asked our people anonymously, made sure they believed it was anonymous. We said, you're not going to be held for it, or we're not going to say, oh my God, how could you say this? And the results we got back were just amazing. And I'm going towards, I'm not making this up, that the numbers were pretty balanced. 50 to 55% wanted to be flexible, rest wanted to come to office, because they said office is where I can actually concentrate, because I do have a small apartment and it's really difficult for me. I want more social interaction because I stay alone. And somebody said, no, it's okay for me to work from here. And we even went to an extent of asking them questions, so employee listening, of saying, what days would you like, preferred days? Like, we leave it. We can't be prescriptive in this world right now. In these times, you can't be prescriptive. And the leaders also need to understand and get behind, and it's our responsibility to keep the right facts and figures in front of them, that this is what they're saying, right?
Yeah. I love what you brought in, because you brought in that what you said was the relationship aspect of work. People, yes, of course, there are some people who will leave because they'll get a better package. But on the whole, if the relationships at work are strong, if we are listening, as you just rightly said, invited the voices to come in, not only invited, but created that trust, how you were going to use that information. Then from that information took action. I mean, that is already creating the culture of the future. Younger generations want their voices heard. They want to be in good relationship. They want to leave at 5 o'clock if they have something to do, knowing that the work will be done. And you are right that it's not the responsibility of HR to provide that, but it is a collective responsibility. I love that, because it says upskilling management and C-suite with empathy and coaching skills and compassion. This is music to our ear.
I was reading it and I was like, oh, you said it right, Sheetal. Absolutely. Emotional intelligence. It's been a hot topic last 2 years, but it is so true.
It is so true. To know what, yeah, go ahead, Burak.
No, I was actually thinking this is so true, and it is also causing, the absence of it is causing a lot of the challenges that HR professionals face. So yes, I mean, Simon also wrote, employees want leaders who are authentic, who listen, who build relationships, who coach. I think this is absolutely necessary. And what I have faced talking to some of my HR clients, experiencing, or the people I coach, some of them feel they're in between in the heart of this tension. Let's say a leader imposing on them, everybody should come to the office 4 days a week, 3 days a week. You are the HR lead. I need you to make this work.
Yeah.
But the HR leader doesn't agree with that. And how do they deal with it? Like that tension that they have been there has been painful for a lot of them. And I would like to hear your thoughts. What do you think HR could do or should do when they are, yes, Naira, you mentioned integrating the tensions is a good way to do it. How do you think they can integrate it? What can HR professionals do to really balance those tensions a bit more?
I mean, my view would be to be exactly what you just explained, to be authentic about it, to actually say things like, you know, because of the function of the business, we need to be in the office 3 days a week. You actually don't have a choice in that. What you might have a choice, and I don't know, again, the situations might be different for different people, is that Mondays and Fridays you could have off. Or I know an organization that put their foot down and said, Wednesday's the only day you can work from home. To be fair, it served with clarity. Then you know it. I think rather than trying to absorb as an HR person the tension, what you want to do is explain the tension and then say why you are making these decisions. And that is a step forward. Yeah. What do you think, Stuti?
I think those conversations, I started with saying we're in a very good time because there were things which made leaders vulnerable. They had to look at somebody as an advisor. And now we are in a position to position ourselves as those advisors, which we've been trying for years, and it's not worked, right? It's always that cost pressure, which the business leaders always tell me. But we are here, I think, as HR professionals, what we can do is to really understand the problem the business is actually facing. And there are so many ways we can influence that. And I have done that, and currently where, of course, a leader would come up with an opinion, but this is why you have diverse teams to be able to say, this is one opinion, and there are the other 3 proposals. And then, of course, whoever is the decision maker makes that decision, and we stick by it. But at least they should be looking at full holistic pictures. And I think HR is now at a place that they need to do it themselves. Goes back to that skill. I think that is a skill on its own to critically understand the business issue and come with a solution, and much better solutions. I've had those conversations with leaders. They've said, oh, there is a cost pressure. And just by doing organic things and nothing to touch, and I can tell you that's a different story for a different day, pretty long, where I didn't even have to touch the workforce, but just moving and tweaking business processes, we were able to save 10%, which was a huge number.
Yeah.
And it just started from saying, this is where where a business leader thought, oh, I didn't know we had an inflated cost. So it's just one of those things, like really understand and be those advisors, but you can't do it if you don't understand what you're solving for.
Yeah.
Great point. HR professionals are essentially the partners, right? In the management leadership of the business. And if they don't know the business, understand the business, it is really a hard thing to do.
And I think and one more point to that is business also HR is the only neutral party. And Naidi, we talked about this. HR is the only neutral party in a whole organization. Thinks about the people, who thinks about the businesses, and that's where we play such a critical role with the business leaders. And this is where the business recognizes it as well. And they would say, okay, I have this issue in this closed room, I can tell you, it's between you and me. And the employee also says, without mingling and sharing any of it, it's our responsibility, which...
Yeah. I know you want to move on, Burak, but I just want to stress it. I did speak to a very senior HR person last week, and that's exactly what she said. She said it's the only place where leaders can come and can unburden and be able to make sense of their thinking and be advised without any attachment to the results. You're there with the person, supporting them to make the decisions. I love the fact that we are already reshaping the narrative here. Yeah.
Very nice. Also, Simon said in the chat that we have an almost unique position with finance, that we can take an independent view across the organization.
Exactly.
Probably even more than finance, because just what you said, Nairi, finance might be still looking at the numbers, where they might have tendencies to support certain things based on their numbers. Right? HR is even more, I think.
It's funny how Simon said it, because it's whenever I am in a role, my two best friends, I tell the head of finance and head of legal, you're my two best friends.
And you know what, we were talking about the tension, because the business leaders are having those tensions as well. So if you're the head of sales, you have to meet your financial goals, your revenue goals, and you need to develop your people, but that's an expense. So you are holding those two tensions. And as you said, going to the HR partner and discussing that, maybe the expense can be shared or whatever it is. And that is what HR offers. HR offers that resolution of the tension and an acceptance that that tension exists in business as well.
Great. Which also brings us to the earlier point mentioned on the chat from Shital, the coaching skills or empathy, compassionate leadership, those skills we expect from our future leaders and our executives we also need in HR populations. And that population is probably a lot more open, if not definitely a lot more open to focusing on those skills. That is the good news here. What other skills? I want to ask that skill question for HR that you think will be really needed for HR professionals to focus on to really influence the business even more.
From a skill perspective, and if you want to put it in bucket in that, I think analytical skills will be key to solving and resolving all the problems we would have. Those would be like really a focus, and that doesn't come naturally. And the other skill is the high EQ, not IQ, but EQ, because emotional intelligence, as I said, you're between employees and the business, and you're managing both. So where do you say this is where the business is, this is the business need, this is a employee's need, or how a workforce would require? So these two skills come top of my head, like this is the future requirement. And then again, these are transferable, right? Yeah. So EQ and the analytical skills would be my top skills, and there are many they can have.
Yeah. And for me to add to that is really relationship mastery, focusing on the relationships within the organization, and how those relationships are being strengthened so that during difficult times or stress times, the relationship is able to hold the people who are involved in the relationship. And you're right that emotional intelligence plays a huge role in it, and also recognition that we contribute to the quality of the relationships we build at work. So every negative comment needs to be well measured and ensure that there's sufficient positive comments made so that that negativity doesn't create such a huge jar, because we do have to give feedback that is not always pleasant to listen to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love what you say about Neri, about holding the space as well, which is actually part of the challenges sometimes when it comes to addressing the present HR issues, right? Because there are so many stressors and the tensions sometimes get big. HR teams sometimes lose the control of that space to like how can they be present, how can they help ground people in the present and help them really come to conclusions, decisions that are more grounded in the real needs rather than the concerns or the past things to fix. That is a very difficult thing to do, which I think is a skill actually for HR. And I think coaching skills helped me a lot in those situations, how we really take a step back, reconsider the situation, slow down, and sometimes you need to slow down to go faster, and that is important.
I think, Barak, that is so true, but I would not even categorize it as skill because HR are the most critical of themselves. Yeah. And we are not generous to ourselves. And if that is a skill, if you want to categorize it, let's be it. But it's very difficult for us to keep ourselves first. And I'm not saying keep ourselves first for conversations like, hey, this should be like this because I said it, but like keep ourselves first. We think about everybody and not us. And coaching and mentoring is the last thing an HR person thinks they need. And that's not because they don't want, because they're making sure everybody is taken care. And somewhere there is also this aspect of saying, yeah, but as an HR, you already have these coaching and mentoring skills yourself. Why do you need one? And you know, that aspect of maybe I would be judged or people will think I am less and I'm not fit for my role if I ask for it. And I think that needs to change because even a therapist has another therapist. If they can have it, I think HR, we need to be nice to ourselves and keep ourselves, our well-being first, because now, if anything, past 2 years have taught me is to really focus. You know, I was at least in the pandemic like a sponge, hearing from how pandemic is affecting. In the US, the Black Lives Matter happened in the same time. People were emotional, taking all those in. I needed somebody to talk to as well and take that out. There was a community effect which we saw, but that mentoring and coaching, I think, is way critical for HR community now than it was before.
Yeah, and you know what, Barak, what you said, and building on what Stuti said, without the HR community being anchored, it cannot hold the space for anyone else, because it will participate in the rhetorical narrative that's going around. It cannot create a space for ventilation and for a solution to come. And without that having some place to put.
Very nice said. And I think it is, what you pointed out is also what made HR Heroes emerge last year. You realize HR population was so giving, so caring, and doing all they could to support their businesses that they didn't have time to look after themselves. So we said, why don't we give something back to HR community? So that is how HR Heroes emerged, and I'm hoping these type of conversations and HR Heroes type of activities are helping our HR community members in that way. I know we are coming to the last 10-15 minutes almost, and I have one more question to ask, but I also wanted to quickly highlight Rebecca's last point on the chat around innovation and creativity in HR population that will also be needed to harmonize that learnings from the past and the present to go to the future. Definitely shaping that future requires that. And I want to ask our participants, what questions would you like to ask our panel members? Any final question anybody would like to ask before I ask my final question to the panel? Please type any questions you have on the chat.
While the participants are typing, I think I'm just going through the comments and I find these so powerful already in terms of the themes and the things people are thinking about. It's just amazing to see. And I'm kind of very happy to be on this panel that they're interacting, because usually through a video, it's difficult to interact and get these nuggets of gold, which we are getting. So I'm very, very excited about this.
Yeah, thanks. Any final questions? Maybe Oh, I see there is a question coming. How do you see the future world of work? Will there be a correlation globally? Very nice. Thanks, Rebecca, for that question. Who would like to take that first?
Stuti, shall we just do this jointly?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing I know, the future world of work will be even more transparent than what it is right now. And for us, as we spoke, transparency means owning things that you might not have the solutions for and seeking others' support, whether that's through the community of HR or experts like LHH or others, to really lean on each other. Because I don't think the future of world work we will be able to solve on our own.
No, absolutely. I think this will be it is already a global phenomena, if I can call it,
Yes.
with the flexibility of work going from one country, one city. It has to be correlated. And I liked the part which you said about transparency. That will happen and is already happening. The other factor, which I think future of world and we will benefit a lot, is the HR community effect. And that transparency and this whole global phenomena, I'm in it with you together, because we all face the great resignation, quitting, Black Lives Matter, pandemic, all of it. And none of it we expected, not even the war, right? I didn't think I would have to go through this in my generation. I had a history lesson, but didn't think I would be living through one.
No.
And in the past pandemic, one of, Nadia and Burak, we've talked about it as well, that all the masks about best practices of this organization and in a CHR roundtable being like a show pony, that went away. Yeah. And when I remember that networking really helped, where people came to the table and said, I have this issue, do you know how can I solve it? Or have you guys done anything? That was so beautiful, that honesty, that vulnerability of sharing. And I have now built up relationships with other companies as well, saying, when there's an issue, you tap into your network and say, hey, do you have positions here and here? Or do you have some talent you would want to share about? And that's how I see this evolving globally.
Yeah.
Great.
Simon's got a question there as well. Do you think that the Great Resignation is a beep, and that a lot of these people that have left employment will return to it over the next 12 months?
If I can start with this, I'm already seeing them coming back. I have legit cases in our organization who left, reevaluated, and came back. That's why Great Resignation turned into quitting. So absolutely. I think the Great Resignation was a good call for the fact which the times people spent and reflected what they wanted from their lives. Some of them realized they did not want a corporate life, and those decisions came after 25 years of corporate life. But because they've never had that time where they could sit and reflect, and they said, look, I don't want to do this. And that is absolutely fine. I respect their choice. And then some of them said, I want to open my real business and see if it works. Why not? And when we talk about different generations who don't want a stable career would be a wrong word, but a stable one organization, 20 years into it, we want a portfolio of career. I'm today into HR, I want to do accounting, I want to go and do a sales role. That's what the new generation is wanting. You have to create those portfolio of career. And we will see a lot of movement. And again, it's on us. How do we want to deal with those movements? But absolutely to that question, I've had cases where people have come back within 6 months, and we've taken them back as well with open arms. Why not?
Yeah. And just to say also, organizations have accommodated, changed a lot of policies, have got transparencies, have put in place more well-being, have talked about the inclusiveness, are aware of the geopolitical stresses that is causing, are more sympathetic, are demanding different things. And that may also attract people to return back, because working on your own by yourself is tough. being in an organization has so many wonderful things. And being current, supporting young people during these very strange times is probably what has also attracted people back to work.
Exactly. Yeah. I was going to say that element you mentioned, Nairi, the connection people can experience in an organization is probably become even more important. And also organizations are slowly but surely, I think this pandemic was a good force for change in that sense, slowly but surely moving towards integrating those tensions, right? Bringing those expectations from the people who resigned, right? They are expecting more flexibility. They are expecting different ways of working, and organizations need to see that. The 4-day work week is becoming a reality in most organizations. We are all looking forward to it, right? I think it is actually working in many ways for those organizations. There is a trial in the UK, as you might know, that has been quite successful, and a lot of organizations are really considering it. There will be more, in my opinion, changes like that in how we organize ourselves in organizations, how we change our policies, and that will attract the population even more, I guess. Clara has a question. Let me move on to that one. Linked to the Great Resignation, salaries at this time are overinflated. When do you think that this will stabilize?
I think it's not even linked to the Great Resignations, but we did see it. I think people, because there is a crisis in workforce in general, and people are jumping from $1 to another, because that's the carrot being shown, this will start to stabilize, I think, in the coming, obviously in the coming months, we will start seeing, because there will be economic situations where those high salaries for a company would not be manageable. We are heading into some of those dark times, not crazy dark. I don't want to be the ominous one here, but that's where we're heading. And this will stabilize. It'll stabilize because, as I said, the one way to look at it is really pay attention to the workforce you already have, rather than what you're trying to get from the outside. Because really that whole inflatedness is being created because it's 4 people, the same 4 people you're targeting. And trust me, if they jumped for you, they will jump for the other one too. So what's the point, right? What's the purpose of all of this? So this will surely, and we will start seeing that stabilization at least by the Q3 of next year, just because of the economical situations all countries across the globe are going through.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I meant, Claire, that it is in the same light of the things. Absolutely.
Yeah. I have one final question before we close. I think, Stuti, you mentioned, I want to wrap up with a few of the things we talked about. The one is questioning the statistical thinking of the past, present, future together, and it creates a bit of chaos, but it is part of the role we want to be aware of. The point you just made around paying attention to the workforce you already have is also quite a strong one, important one. You also mentioned one more point, which was around knowing the business, self-care, being really also compassionate to yourself. Nairi mentioned similar topics. So there are lots of things actually HR professionals need to do. What I would like to ask is, if we haven't covered it yet, what other tips do you have for HR professionals to have a bigger influence in their businesses? And I would like to start with Nairi, if you don't.
Oh, sorry, I was waiting for Stuti to say.
But I want to jump to Nairi.
Go on, Stuti. Come on, break the rules.
No, I was just going to say you already shared them so much. I want to hear from Nairi too, but let's give it.
I'll be quick. I think you summarized it really well, so I'm not going to repeat that. Few of the things which I would mention is more about, for HRs, is start thinking about flexibility within frameworks, because there are situations that are not supportive to do what you want to do. So one of the points, I think it was Rebecca who mentioned about creativity. That was for me also around flexibility in the framework, and thinking about more smart working than heavy lift, output driven rather than time spent. That back of your head will start moving your mind in a direction where you will start thinking of different solutions to approach an issue. So that would be my add-ons to whatever you said, Parag, and I'll give it to Nairi now.
On top of all that, I think the question, how can HR play a bigger role in the new world of work, feels huge. So my recommendation would be to know that you are already playing the bigger role. And what would it be like if you actually own that role? So rather than even making it bigger, which is what Stuti was saying, how can you really fully know that you are already playing a bigger role? And how can you influence energetically and also in the roles that you hold to make to support, not even support, but to actually be the people who drive some of the decisions around people yourself. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Absolutely.
Wow. What a beautiful way to close the session, Nairi, and you did it in such a nice coaching style. Thank you both for joining this session with me today. It was really lovely to hear your insights, and thank you everyone for your participation. Really great audience today. We look forward to continuing these conversations. And if you have any questions, any thoughts you want to share after the session, please feel free to share them as well. And I will close that with this note from Nairi. How do we own the role and bring that beautiful, unique gifts we all have in our roles to this world, and wishing you good luck in doing all that, and see you soon.